Got another big subject. Wow, there it is. Another big subject now for you now, which is technological solutions for greener events. Few better qualified to discuss that than Steve Taylor from A Greener Festival. I won't say any more about it because I don't know a whole lot about it, so I'll hand over to Steve. If you want to ask Steve questions at any stage, do use Slido, which will register your questions and give us a list of who wants to ask what and prioritise them. All the details on there, how to get involved with that, and I'll hand you over to Steve.
Thank you, Nick. As you can imagine, Greener Festival is a big subject, a lot of things to cover. So I'm going to give you a bit of a run through. Why should we be thinking about greener festivals? Well, this year has been the year of sustainability. If there's one issue that's taken off at the festival world more than any other, it's sustainability. At Greener Festival, we've been running for 12 years, assessing, you can see, over 450 festivals, looking at a whole number of aspects as to how festivals and events address aspects of sustainability. In the last year, and it's nearly all down to the David Attenborough program showing a turtle eating plastic, the world has changed. Suddenly, everyone is now interested. So it's become a big thing for us. And that means we have to embrace change. We have to try and keep up with changes. We have the good aspect of people making our job easier by introducing new technologies, new systems. Oh, it's a slow system here. Yeah. The government tell us we should be looking at a circular economy rather than just making something and throwing it away. We should be more resourceful. We think that the whole idea of an event and a festival is a good place to test out circular economy aspects. And by that, what I mean by that is that festivals have often been experimental grounds. People have tried a number of different things, some successful, some unsuccessful. But when people go to a festival, they're prepared to try something different. And what I want to do today is go through some of those things that are slightly different, some successful, some unsuccessful. Good news, I'm not going to run through all the words on this slide, but I'm just going to pick out a couple of things to give you some kind of context. First of all, if I look at power, I worked at a festival in Scotland that used over 110,000 litres of diesel in a 3-day weekend. Diesel use is massive, so we want to cut that down as best we can. If I skip down to wastewater, all the porta toilets that you find at a festival. One year I asked the people running it, I said, so you take all this toilet waste off to a sewage works. I said, how many miles do you do? And they came back to me a week later and they said, 8,000 tanker miles. 8,000 miles in a lorry that does about 6 miles to the gallon. That's a massive carbon emission. So I thought, well, we'll be changing that one next year. And again, waste, solid waste. One year at a festival I worked at, they produced 1,500 tons of waste that went to landfill. At a cost of £100 a ton, you can work out the cost of that. A year later, we reduced it to 500. Now, I can't take all the credit for reducing it by 1,000 tons. Partly it was to do with wet weather the year before where everything was wet and muddy and very heavy. But you can make changes, and we did do that. And you can imagine the bottom line if you're saving 1,000 tons of waste at £100 a ton. Quick point I would like to make is that technology sounds great, but actually it ain't what you do, it's the way you do it. You've got to really make sure that it's adapted to your event. Sometimes try not to be too clever with the technology because a simple solution might actually be better, but really try and understand your event. And just to put that in context, the Transmit Festival in Glasgow this year, with the same audience 2 days in a row, the day that Liam Gallagher was on stage, used double the waste, double the resources, everything was double the day before. Same audience numbers, so it's hard to understand why, but it's about understanding your audience and understanding that two events can be very different. So let's get on to some exciting stuff and start with the toilets. Luwatt is a new system that's been developed for use at music festivals and other applications. It's a dry system, so it doesn't use water. And if you can imagine an event taking place in a big green field like Glastonbury, for example, there is a shortage of water. You don't want to be tankering water in, so it saves water. There's no chemicals. It simply uses biodegradable bags and a nice mechanical system, and then the process of anaerobic digestion. It can all be done on site, and it generates small amounts of power so that there is no need for the toilet part of the site to use any diesel fuel for lighting or any other uses in the toilet area. And the figures are actually quite impressive. So a headline figure there, 2,344 kilowatt hours of energy generated last year just through toilet waste. And it is better than that. Sticking with the same theme, there is a company called P-Power. They use microbial fuel cells to generate urine into energy. And also, the byproduct is phosphorus, which they separate out. There is a shortage of phosphorus. It's any farmer will tell you, we need phosphorus in the ground. So we're starting to work with nature here, not just generate out power, but also do things that are good for the ground. I'll move on to waste. If anyone has been to a festival and left on the final day and seen the tent waste left behind, this is how bad it can get. Most of these tents cost £10 from Asda, which is why they're left behind. There are solutions. I'm not sure that this is the ideal solution for a festival like Glastonbury. You're not going to fit one of these into your backpack and take it along to a festival. But it does show some of the things that are moving in the world of tents, and certainly in the world of glamping. We'll be getting closer to these kind of tents. I must admit I'd rather stay in something like that than some of the tents we saw in the last slide. But we can look at the headings there, some of the things that are now available in a tent through fairly simple solar-driven technology. And the world is definitely moving on. I'll quickly skim over this slide because I don't particularly like it, but these are cardboard tents, which work in some environments because cardboard can be recycled. It can be collected and recycled. Events that I've been to in Scotland where it rains all the time, it's not so easy recycling wet cardboard, so I think this one has limited value. Moving away from the festivals and more to an indoor facility, and a good example from Rotterdam, where this particular nightclub takes all its biodegradable waste and generates power through anaerobic digestion, but also it has a dance floor. It's not on the picture here because they've been around a few years, so it's not particularly new technology, but a kinetic dance floor that generates power through kinetic energy. The more you move, the more power you generate. These two pictures show the benefit of putting a deposit system on your cups. Two very similar environments. One, the cups have a deposit system. The other is single-use plastic cups. It's fairly clear that if you get people to return their cups, you will get a lot less visible waste. But also, it's much better for the system. Single-use plastics have been one of the biggest issues we've addressed this year. The European Union have just announced they are going to ban it. It's almost certain that single-use plastic cups will be banned in Scotland. The Scottish government will probably be ahead of the UK government, but it's going to come, so we have to prepare for alternatives. The example I have here is a very successful system that happened at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow using compostable cups. Now, they are still single-use, but as long as you collect them, and we had some helpers making sure that they were collected, and as long as you work with the facility that will take them at the end, which will be an anaerobic digestion facility that will turn these cups into compost. So what comes out of the ground goes back into the ground. They're made from cornstarch, very low carbon in the manufacture. Collect them well, and they can then be turned into compost and reused. And at this event, we got an 80% recycling rate, which for a massive 14-day event at the Commonwealth Games, that's a phenomenal recycling rate. But it couldn't have been done without using compostable packaging. This is technology making bins slightly easier. I don't want to talk too long about this, but you can see the bins themselves are starting to become a bit cleverer. And a simple thing that can be very practical is the idea that the bin has an alarm, so it can tell you when it's full. And if you're trying to empty bins on a large site, it's good to know when they need emptied, rather than just traveling around hoping that there's a full bin and finding that they don't need to be emptied. That's the solution found too often, even on a well-marked bin identified for recycling. That's what we see. So you can see the benefit of a solar bin that is much more compact and tidy. This to me is a better solution. This is one of my favourite solutions. This is from the Hebridean Celtic Festival in the Isle of Lewis. And we used a machine that you put in your drinks container. In this event, we had compostable beer cups, we had cans, we had plastic bottles. The machine's clever enough to sort them out. So the containers around the back, separate them into plastic, cans, and compostables. And again, we achieved an 80% recycling rate. One of the things I liked about it was everybody got involved. I'm not sure what the girl in the slide is doing. It's a bit of a strange picture. But I like this because it shows 3 generations there all getting involved in trying to put the cup into the machine. And part of the reason it worked well is we gave a reward. It was a bit like a lottery system. Some you win, some you don't. But we had a lot of people, especially children, picking up beer cups off the ground to put them in the machine to see if they could win a drink, a T-shirt, a hoodie, or other prizes. Another novelty to try and get people to engage with waste and not just throw it away. We used a bike, a simple bike. We called it the recycling bike. We went round and we said, put your compostables in one compartment, your plastics in another, your landfill waste in another. It got people talking. It was a friendly thing to do. There's no harm a bicycle going around a large crowd of people in a way that a lorry cannot go around a large crowd of people. And that's been very effective, used at a number of festivals. I'm going to skip over that. I don't want to talk too much about RFID today because you'll hear that throughout the day, but it is something that we're applying to festivals, particularly within the food and food waste. I'm happy to take more questions on that, but I'm conscious that I don't want to talk too long because I want to leave time for questions, so I won't go into too much detail on that. Moving around within a site, if you've got a site like Glastonbury, it's easier to do literally thousands of miles travelling around the site during the setup period, during the takedown period. A few years ago, you'd have seen everybody driving Range Rovers, doing, 10, 12 miles to the gallon. Now we're starting to try some simple technology, get people to move around site in bicycles, golf buggies, electric vehicles, and even walking around site. But it just needed someone to say, why are you doing thousands of miles in a Range Rover? So it's more about management than technology. But again, something like the recycling bike that we saw earlier, you can move around site in that, no carbon emissions, no fuel usage, saves money, and gets around site, enables people to move things around a site. If you do have to use diesel, there's a new product that's been released in Finland, made from paper factory waste, called Blue Diesel. It's not a solution, in my opinion, but it's a step in the right direction. Much lower carbon emissions, it's a waste product, and it's something that if you are going to use diesel, this could be something that is a step in the right direction. Energy, we're increasingly trying to use solar panels, solar PV to generate energy at events and festivals. It's not easy because they generate small amounts, and they don't always generate, of course, after dark. So we're starting to use battery systems, and these are growing. This is a growing market where there are more and more products coming on the market that are increasingly effective. And we're reaching the stage where now batteries that can take energy generated during the day but needed during the evening, that can be worked better through some of the battery systems. This is just one example that was used in the Netherlands at the Digital Festival. But this is a market where it's worth spending a bit of time looking at the products that are on the market because it's increasing rapidly. Very quickly, there's a nice easy win there. You can see this has been the year where people have banned straws. Not really too much. You don't miss out too much by being told you're not allowed to use a plastic straw. There are compostable and paper straws, but I'm sure we can all manage without a straw. But that's an easy win. But there are some bigger issues that are next on the heading to be banned. Obviously, we mentioned single-use plastic cups. Fireworks. There's a few people who got the thoughts out for fireworks because there's a lot of pollution associated with fireworks. And did you know, and I didn't know this till recently, green fireworks take a lot of barium, so you should try and avoid green ones. So you might find that they're the next thing to be banned in the near future. Very quickly, some of the things we have to think about at a festival that can cause pollution. Diesel spillage, chemical spillage, porta-toilet spillage. There are quite often pollution incidents we have to be aware of. There's some new products on the market that can help. And this is... Oops. This one, which actually is pronounced Durex. It's a German company. Someone didn't really advise them on the name that well. But this is a byproduct of other materials. They call it clever cotton, and it absorbs oil spillages. Very clever device, new to the market about 2 years ago, and increasingly kept in storage in case you have a diesel spillage. And any festival organizer should be aware that the Environment Agency can come and close down a festival if there's a diesel spillage to ground. So it's something that could be worth having in storage. And I'm going to finish up with a story that I particularly like. The best festival I've ever worked at was the Lake of Stars Festival on the shores of Lake Malawi. And you might say, well, what's that got to do with technology? This is a very low technology solution to an issue, but it's one that I think always leaves me with a smile on my face, because sustainability and resourcefulness at festivals, I think, doesn't get any better than this. But one of the things we try to do at the Lake of Stars is get festival goers, which might be rich Malawians, rich South Africans, a few people traveling around Africa, come away from the festival, come into the village. And I take people to go and visit the orphan schools. Unfortunately, there's 2 orphan schools in the area. This one is quite well resourced. You'll see the children sitting at desks. They get a bit of money from Western donators. And the kids are being taught at school. They love to see guests from other countries come and visit. This school is less well resourced. The desks you see there are the only desks in the whole school. Most of the children sit on the floor and learn sitting on a floor. We realized that at the Lake of Stars, we'd built a stage out of wood. And when I spoke to the headmaster of that second school, he said, "Can I have the wood to make desks?" And what we've now found is that the children of that school are able to learn sitting at a desk made from wood that was the stage of Lake of Stars. And I think for me, it's low tech. It didn't use anything more than a saw, a spirit level, and a few nails. But in terms of resourcefulness, sustainability, and making your event really green, I think that's one of the best stories that I've come across in all the years I've been working at festivals. And finally, a quick plug: if you're interested in greener events, greener innovations, come along to the Greener Events and Innovations event, a conference in March next year. More details will be available on that, but that's the big annual event for green events and innovations. Thank you very much.
Steve. Question from the floor. Do you know who made the reverse vending wagon?
Who made the reverse vending wagon? Yeah. The reverse vending machine was made by a company called Tomra. They're a Norwegian company, although I'm not quite sure how this works, but they're based in Germany despite being a Norwegian company. There are other companies. Tomra are the best known, and they're the ones we used. We found the machine worked really well, but it does need a mechanic on hand. Every so often a plastic cup might get jammed. It just needs someone literally to put a screwdriver in the back and take it out, which obviously is a downside. But that was about the only downside I found of it. Tomra is spelled Tomra.
Something a little bit less specific, but with the technology in festivals, what good does being a green festival actually do to the greater environment? And how much of it is an example for people to take away with them to change how they live at home? And how transferable is the technology to make that happen?
Well, firstly, if you were to apply for a Greener Festival Award, we can measure your carbon emissions and set you a target to try and reduce your carbon footprint year on year. I think for me, some of the drivers are the ones I mentioned very briefly at the beginning. If you're a festival that sends 1,500 tons of waste to landfill at £100 a ton, and you can try and reduce that to 500, that gets the finance director interested. And that's it is the case that that's usually the starting point. If you get the finance director interested, you get the door opened. I think in the last year, more people have come to me and said, yeah, we're really interested in that sustainability bit. We're going to have to ban straws, a nice easy one. But we're going to start thinking about single-use plastic and reduce plastic on site. And I think the momentum has changed in the last year. There is a much greater emphasis on reducing plastic. And if we are involved with a festival, we will want to measure how much plastic has been sent. Can't always do it, but you can get a good idea. The waste management team will get waste notes and let you know what waste has been taken off site. We can get a good idea of how much is plastic. Some of it gets lost in general landfill. But we can then set people a record that says, well, this is what you did last year, and this is your improved performance this year. And in many cases, we can then apply your carbon savings to that and work out your carbon footprint per person.
Any more for Steve? Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.